Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over one question for every NBA team this offseason. We are going to be looking at all of them, just what about the draft, free agency trades. Let's just hop right into it because this is probably going to be a long one. So Charlotte, they have uh, some cap space, but not much. They have 5 mil. My question is, what do you do with LaMelo? Do you commit to him long term, or do they start trying to look at the trade market? Not saying he's going to be traded, but he's someone that has been riddled with injuries throughout his career, and while he's very good when he plays, he doesn't play a ton, and we've started to see Brendan Miller come around. We've started to see, you know, some talent popping up on the team, and if you could get a haul for LaMelo, I'm not saying trade him for cheap, right? But if the Spurs were to offer you like 5 first-round picks and a few of their young guys, maybe you take that. If you were to get, a couple of really good young players and some picks for them, maybe you look at that. I don't think they do, but also I don't really have much to say on the Hornets, so it was, you know, that's just a question that popped into my head. For Detroit, it is, can you overcome the Troy Weaver stank that has been on the franchise for a long time? Because he was there for a while, and they have a new guy in. They fired Monty Williams. They are washing away last season. But can they fully get back to being a better team than they were last year? Can they make smarter decisions? Can they take what happened last year and kind of build from it, improve? Because while it is not a high bar to improve from, I believe, 14 wins, it's still Detroit, and they have been really bad for since Blake Griffin left. They've gotten the fifth pick, I believe, 4 years in a row now, and I wonder what they'll do with the pick. I wonder what they'll do with the 64 mil they have in cap space. Do you bring in, a couple of vets, maybe a KCP, maybe, Clay Thompson, someone with experience that can kind of coach these young guys up a little bit, be a mentor for a few of them. And can you get a coach that'll properly utilize some of the young players you have on your roster? If they keep Jaden Ivey, can you have someone stagger him and Cade more and develop him more as an on-ball scorer? Can you use Asar Thompson as more than just sitting in the corner because he's mostly a playmaker on offense, a finisher? That's my question. For Utah, it's what do you do with Lauri Markkanen? I think they should trade him for a bevy of first-round picks and young players because you can probably get that for him. He's cheap right now, and there are a lot of teams that would love to have him on their team. But it doesn't seem like Danny Ainge wants to do that. For some reason, it seems like the Jazz want to compete, and I just don't understand that in the slightest. Like, why would you want to compete if you're the Jazz? You don't have the talent to do so. You probably aren't building the talent to do so. You're not trading your assets away, And, well, they're trading Walker Kessler away, or at least looking at it. I wonder what they can get for him. But my question is, what do you do with Lauri? Do you trade him? Do you keep him? Do you extend him? If you keep him, you're extending him. But, then he loses some of his trade value because he's on a bigger contract. For the Spurs, it's how far in do you go? Because I believe they're going to make some changes to the roster, right? I think they'll sign a couple of guys in free agency that are more win now than they had last season. They might make a couple of trades, but I wonder how far in they go because Wemby is already a top 15 player in the league, give or take. And by the end of next season, he might be top 10, right? So do you go pretty far in, get a all-star next to him, trade a good amount of your assets to get that guy, or do you kind of take a couple of small steps towards winning, right? Kind of like the Rockets did last offseason, where I don't think they'll spend as much money as the Rockets because they don't have that much cap space. They have about 21 mil from the looks of it. But do you sign a couple of veterans Do you trade for a couple of guys who know how to win, but you still keep most of your young talent and just develop them naturally, take a step up, become an 11, 10, 9 seed, somewhere in that zone. Curious what they do there. OKC. OKC is a frustrating team for me because I'm a Nuggets fan, and the Caruso trade was really, really good for them. And if you want to hear my full thoughts, I released a podcast the other day, and the first 20 minutes of that were on the Caruso trade. But outside of that, what do you do to address the other needs on your roster? Because point of attack defense wasn't really a need for them. It's nice to get Caruso, no doubt. Caruso is a fantastic addition for them, and he kind of takes them up into the inner circle tier, to me, of contention. But do you get a big man in free agency? Do you draft one? Because originally it seemed like they were targeting Isaiah Hartenstein, but now he's going back to the Knicks and all, from the looks of it. So do you sign maybe an Andre Drummond in free agency? Do you trade up to get a Donovan Clingan, or do you stay where you're at, take one of the other centers in this class? I'm not high on a ton of them, but there are some people that are high on a Zach Edey, on a Kel'el Ware, and on a Yves Misi. But do you go after one of those guys? Do you sign someone in the offseason? Because to me, they view Chet as the 5 long-term, it looks like. I would view Chet long-term as a 5. So you want someone, a defensive 4, who is, defensive, rebounding, still can shoot because you want to keep that. So I don't know who that guy is for them, but I think they could go get him because they have a million first-round picks in the next few seasons. Houston, it really comes down to how much do you bet on your guys improving? What is the bet there, right? Because Jalen Green looked really good at the end of last season. Do you move on from a couple of your guys to free up some to build around him more? Do you sell high on him? Try and get someone in that more complements an Amen Thompson, a Tari Eason, a Jabari Smith? Do you just let it ride? What are you trying to do next season? Because right now I think they're in that zone where they're going to be a play-in team in all likelihood. And I just don't know if you want to be a play-in team, because I feel like you're good enough, your young guys are getting good enough to where you're not going to be at the bottom of the draft anymore, or at the top of the draft anymore. But you're not quite good enough to become an established playoff team. And if you want to take another season, I think that's fine. But I would like to see them make some moves to better optimize their roster right now. Choose a direction, For Brooklyn, what are you doing? That's my question. What are they doing? Because you have Cam Thomas, you have, a couple good young guys, Day'Ron Sharpe, and then Nick Claxton is a free agent. I've heard he's probably going to go back, but I don't know that for a fact. And then you have Mikal Bridges, who you want to build around. I don't understand why you would want to build around Mikal Bridges and think he's going to learn another free agent. That's just not going to happen, in my opinion. But also, who am I to say? It could happen, I guess. But the Brooklyn Nets are in a bad spot, and I don't think they're going to find their way out of it anytime soon. The Raptors, what do you do to further rebuild, right? Because they're fully resetting. They traded OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam finally. They got in some picks for Pascal. They got in a couple of young guys, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley for OG Anunoby. And do you go back and, trade more of your veterans, get more young guys in there, send out a Jakob Poeltl, a Kelly Olynyk, get some more young talent in, even if it's not going to be super high-end young talent, if you could get, just a promising young talent, right? If you can go to the Thunder and get Aaron Wiggins, for example, for someone, Bruce Brown maybe. Do you do that? Or do you try and still do the thing where you're like, oh, we're going to be a little competitive, which is dumb. You should, I think, fully reset. Their average age of their roster is still 26, and I think that's too high for them. But, yeah. Orlando, my question is, how do you address the shooting problem on the roster? Because we all saw the Cavs playoff series; they could not hit an outside shot outside of like Jalen Suggs and Paolo. So do you go get what they've been rumored to want is a Klay Thompson, a KCP? You have $49 million cap. You can sign one of those two. Please don't sign KCP. But how do you address those issues? Do you trade for Zach LaVine? They've been rumored that they might be a trade destination for him, and I think Zach LaVine kind of helps them, but I don't love that contract, obviously. But yeah, what do you do to further optimize the roster around Paolo and Franz? You add shooting. What shooting are they going to add? Sacramento, it's just, can Keegan Murray take that next step? Because I think if the Kings want to be an established playoff team, if they want to be a top 6 seed, if they want to make it to the second round or further, they're going to need Keegan Murray to take a jump. Because DeMontis Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox are great. They're all-star level talents. And they can teeter on all NBA talents. But in the West, you need a third guy who's going to be reliable for you. Is that going to be Keegan Murray? Can he take that next step? Can he become a good third option? And he was really good this past season, but I just want to see another step from him. I want to see him average 20. I want to see him average 25 and 3, right? On good defense, good efficiency. For the Grizzlies, can you stay healthy? I think that's all it comes down to, because Ja had his suspension and then came back and then got hurt. Jaren Jackson has been in and out of lineups. Brandon Clark was injured for most of this season. They have just dealt with a plethora of injuries. They were rolling out Timmy Allen on a 10-day by the end of the season, and 7 of their guys were on 10-day deals at the end of the season, which is insane. But if you can stay healthy, we've seen this team be very good in the past. We know that Ja Morant can be a top 25 player in the league, a top 20 player probably. You have the talent. Can you just stay healthy so you can get a top 5 seed in the West, right? The West is so stacked, man. The Cavs, what do you do with your backcourt? Do you extend Donovan Mitchell? Is he going to sign that extension? If not, what can you get for him? And if you do sign him to an extension, does Darius Garland still want to be there? Because it's been rumored they want to keep both of them, but it's also been thrown out there that Darius Garland might request a trade if Mitchell is signed long term, and obviously Mitchell is better than Garland. But what could you get for Garland? Because I'm curious as to what his value would be around the league, because he is a small guard that has taken a step back this past season from the heights he had previously. And while he's still young and he still has a lot of upside, some teams might be put off by the lack of production last season, how he looked in the playoffs, all that stuff. Dallas, can you re-sign Derrick Jones Jr.? Can you run it back and expect the same results? Those are my 2 questions. As for the first one, I don't think they can. I think it's a Bruce Brown situation like last year where they can only offer so much money, and I think Derrick Jones Jr. is going to get offered more by some team. Now, whether that team is good enough to lure him away or not, that remains to be seen. But I have a hard time seeing them retain Derrick Jones Jr. unless he wants to take a pay cut. If he wants to take a pay cut, great. He's a fantastic role player and was very integral to the finals run that they just had. But also, I don't feel like that run is super replicable next season, because Thunder are going to get better. The Nuggets might be a matchup for them, and they match up poorly against the Nuggets. The Timberwolves are probably going to get better because Ant's probably going to get better. So a bunch of teams are going to improve or remain the same, but they didn't run into them. And there was a lot of outlier shooting for them on this run. P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. in that Thunder series specifically. So what do you do to improve on the roster? They have some young guys that they might be able to trade, get some better veterans in. Obviously, I'm not talking about Derek Lively. I'm talking more about Maxence Prosper and maybe Jaden Hardy, if depending on how you feel about him. But yeah, Portland. Why are you keeping Chauncey Billups? Because he's a bad coach. He's not good. He is hindering the development of basically all your young talent, and you need this young talent to develop. You need Scoot Henderson to get to his ceiling. You need DeAndre Ayton to be better than he was. You need Simons and Shaden to be better. And he's just not a good coach to develop talent. So why is he still there? Fire him in December. Fire him yesterday. Because he's not good enough, and I don't see him being good enough. Atlanta, what do you do with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray? I think you trade one of them. You can't keep both of them. They can't really play together. We saw that last season, where when one of them was out, the team was vastly better than when both of them were in. DeJounte without Trae was a really good lineup, and Trae without DeJounte was a really good lineup as well. And now you have the first pick. So who do you take there? It's been rumored that they want to take Zachary Risache, and I feel like that would be a big mistake. Donovan Clingan, I understand the thought process. I personally wouldn't take him, but, if you want to take him, sure. I don't hate the pick, I guess. But do you try and trade down? Because it's been rumored that the Spurs are interested, so do you trade down to, 4 and 8, or trade back for some of your own picks? What do you do there? That's the conundrum that they're facing this offseason, so we will see. The Pelicans, what can you do with Brandon Ingram? What can you get for him in a trade? Because it seems that he's likely gone. Valanciunas is gone. So what are you doing around the roster this year? What is the next step for this team? Because Zion is very good, but also injury prone. And then they have more good young talent. They have Trey Murphy. They have Herb Jones. They have, a lot of depth. Can you take that next step with some more optimized pieces, like a better 5 next to Zion instead of Valanciunas, with a hopefully better secondary creator for his playstyle than Brandon Ingram, because it seems like they're likely to trade him. So what can you do to maximize the talent that you have? What can you do to maximize your window? For the Miami Heat, it's what happens with Jimmy Butler. It does not seem like that is going towards a happy ending. It does not seem like they want to give Jimmy his money, and Jimmy seems like he does not want to take less than the max. So do you trade him? It's seeming like they will, but also who's going to trade for Jimmy Butler? What can you get back for him? I don't imagine his value will be incredibly high, but we will see, I suppose. And then if you do trade him, what do you do with the rest of the roster? Because a lot of your roster is old. The average age is 28.2. That's one of the oldest in the league, and you have a lot of veterans there that probably don't have a ton of trade value. So do you just use next year as a bridge year, or do you try and fully bottom out and just kind of rock with what you got, The Bucks, what can you do to make, the team better than it was? Because under Doc Rivers, it was bad. It was very bad. They were 30-13 at one point, and they didn't finish with a 50-win season. That's bad. And Dame and Giannis didn't work super well together as we thought they would, or as well together as we thought they would. Dame seems to have taken a step back. Can he get better with another offseason of settling into Milwaukee? Because a lot of stuff was going on in his personal life. He was, dealing with mental health stuff, and that's completely understandable. But can he sort of take that and settle in more this offseason, get better, get back to where he was in Portland? Giannis, can you just stay healthy for the playoffs? Because if you're not healthy for the playoffs, this is not a second-round team. If you can, this is probably an Eastern Conference Finals or Finals team. A lot of it just banks on health. And that's all it comes down to. The Knicks, are you going to re-sign OG Anunoby? Probably yes. And then what do you do with Julius Randle? Because the run they made last season probably would have been an Eastern Conference Finals berth if they weren't injured from top to bottom on that roster. And it was done without Julius Randle. And I think the optimized build for this team is probably built with someone in Julius Randle's place that is not him. because as a playoff performer, he is awful. He's not good. So what do you do there? How do you build on what you did? And can you try and reduce your starter minutes until the playoffs? I don't think that'll happen because it's Tibbs, and Tibbs is, he's how he is. That's always how he's coached, and he seems like he is pretty set in his ways as a coach, but, maybe someone in the front office can talk to him and get him to, renege on some of that stuff, but we'll see. The Indiana Pacers, how can you build on what you did last year? Because Pascal was great for you guys. Halliburton started to look better like he was at the start of the season towards the end of the year, but there was a large patch where his hamstring was very clearly hampering him. I think he is more the player that we saw at the start of the year than he was in the second half of the year, but what does he look like in the next season? You have Andrew Nembhard, who showed great promise in the playoff run. You have a couple of other young guys like Jarris Walker, like, Ben Shepherd, Benedict Mathurin. What do those guys develop in the offseason? What leaps do they take? Because Indiana's a very promising team. They just made the Eastern Conference Finals, and while, yes, they did play injured teams to get there, they still got there in the end. So what do you do to build with that? Boston, I don't have a question. You bring everyone back, you run it back. And then how good are you is kind of the question, and the answer is very good. I guess the biggest question with them is like Porzingis' health, but even then, they're a very, 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 very great team, and we saw that this year. So I don't really have questions about Boston. Denver, do you pay up for KCP? And if not, why not? And it would be because the owners are cheap, but it's seeming like KCP is headed out the door, and that would be a very bad situation for the Nuggets to be in. Christian Brown is not nearly the shooter KCP is, and Julian Strawther is not nearly the defender he is, so you don't really have an option in-house to replace him, but you also don't have the assets to go get a replacement for him because you didn't trade for Caruso, and then there's not really another player of that caliber on the market. So, yeah, I've ranted about this on a ton of podcasts, but, that's the high and low of it. The Lakers. How many podcast episodes are you going to get from LeBron and JJ during the season? Because that is an interesting hire. I'm not saying he'll be a bad coach, but I don't think he should have taken the Lakers coach. And this has been said many, many times by many different people, so I won't go too far into it. But you are setting yourself up for a scapegoating. You are setting yourself up to be ridiculed, and you will have a lot of pressure on you as the Lakers coach. And he has not coached anywhere beyond his kids' basketball team, which I believe his kid is like 10 or 11. So beyond like youth league. And now he's coaching the Los Angeles Lakers. So we'll see where that goes. The Wizards, can you stop being so shambolic? You guys are a very poorly run organization. Johnny Davis was a bust. He's the biggest bust we've seen in a while, I think. He was a not great rotation player for the Go-Go. So, can they actually start course correcting this year? Bilal Coulibaly was a good start. Can you keep up the good record with drafting? Because it's seeming like if the Hawks don't trade out, that Sarr is going to go to the Wizards, and I think Sarr is the best prospect in this draft. It's either him or Ron Holland in my mind. But, yeah. The Bulls. Do you continue to tear it down? If yes, how many picks can you get in? How many young players can you get in? What do you get for Zach LaVine? What do you get for Vucevic? Please don't bring DeMar back. But knowing them, they're going to bring DeMar back. They're going to trade LaVine for win-now pieces, and they're going to be the 10 seed, and they will have the 11th pick in the lottery next season. The Clippers, what do you do with PG? Because it does not seem like they want to give him his max contract. He does not seem like he wants to take less than that max contract. But you don't really have avenues outside of giving him money or a sign and trade to get better for him. And what are you getting in a sign and trade for Paul George? I'm not sure. Do you trade him to like the Warriors for Andrew Wiggins? I don't think that does much for you. Do you trade him to... I mean, the Sixers' interest waned on him, so you're probably not getting anything there. Yeah. The Suns... The Suns are another team like the Nets or the Clippers where it's like they don't have much flexibility with the pathway they take. They're running it back. It's just, can you hit in the first round? Can you get a player that'll be good? If yes, you're probably a little better than you were this year. If no, you're probably a little worse than you were this year. Either way, you're probably a first round out. The Sixers, what do you do with all the cap space? What do you do with your picks? Because they have over $60 million in cap space, they can offer just about anyone any amount of money that they can get, and they have interest in KCP seemingly. They have interest in, well, they had interest in Paul George, but then that waned. They were rumored to be interested in Caruso, then Caruso got traded. So they're already on plan C or D because now they're down to like Brandon Ingram or Zach LaVine. But do you go the role player route? Do you trade for role players around the league? Do you sign, a KCP, something like that? The Warriors, how do you optimize Steph's last few years? Because the way it is now is not doing that. Now, if I were the Warriors, I'd trade Steph to the Denver Nuggets, but, that's just me. And then the Timberwolves, do you just run it back? What do you change if you don't? Just asking the questions because, Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert had their moments in the playoffs, and I don't think you trade Rudy Gobert because you're not getting back what you just traded for him 2 off seasons ago at this point. But also, I don't think Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert is a front court that'll take you to a title. So, what do you do with those two players? Okay. My camera's been out of focus. Great. Well, I'll probably add highlights over this then. But, yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all that. Bye.